Yo, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're deep diving into something that's been so close to my heart for as long as I can remember. If you've ever watched an anime and thought, this is something special, I think you'll agree with me when I say there's just something irreplaceable about vintage anime. From Astro Boy to Akira to Spirited Away, vintage anime has a unique magic that continues to captivate new generations decades after it first aired. But what makes these shows so timeless? Is it the art? Is it the stories? Or is it something deeper? Well, today we're going to explore exactly why these old school gems still hold a special place in our hearts and what they continue to teach us about animation, culture, and storytelling. So let's rewind a bit and talk about the golden age of anime. For many fans, this is the era that really defined anime as an art form. It's the period from the 1960s through to the 1980s, a time where the anime industry was laying the groundwork for everything that followed. The golden age wasn't just about flashy animation or eye-catching characters. It was about experimentation and setting the tone for what would come. For example, Astro Boy, created by Osamu Tezuka, was one of the first animes to air internationally, and it didn't just capture our attention with its sleek animation. It introduced to us a complex of ideas, like humanity's relationship with technology, which was pretty groundbreaking for its time. The 60s and 70s were a time of rapid technological advancements, and anime reflected that. Shows like Speed Racer brought the high-speed, futuristic thrill of racing to life, while Lupin III gave us a unique blend of action, comedy, and suspense. These weren't just kid shows, they were full of ideas that would shape the genre for years to come. The beauty of these early series is that they weren't afraid to tackle big ideas. They didn't just entertain, they challenged their audiences, pushing the boundaries of what animation could convey. And let's not forget the crucial cultural context. Many of these shows were also influenced by the changing political and social landscape of Japan and the world during the post-war era. Okay, let's talk about what immediately stands out when you watch vintage anime. The art style. Even from the very first glance, you know you're watching a typical Western cartoon. There's something about those exaggerated eyes, the bold outlines, and the painstaking hand-drawn animation that gives these shows their iconic look. Anime's art style has always been one of the strongest points. Early anime series were crafted with extreme care, each frame meticulously drawn by hand. Unlike Western animation, which relied heavily on the stiffer, more mechanical designs, Japanese animation embraced fluidity, dynamism, and dramatic flair. And it wasn't just about the character designs. Now, apologies for the pronunciation, but Take Nasuka of the Valley of the Wind, for instance, the world building in that movie is unbelievable. The way that Studio Ghibli created a living environment through animation, from the vast toxic jungle to the mechanical creatures, every detail was painstakingly drawn by hand. You can almost feel the wind, the grass, and the decay of the world around Nausicaa. It's like the art is telling you the story before the characters even say a word. But you know what's funny? We often think of old anime as having a kind of raw or rough around the edges type of style. But when you watch it closely, there's a certain polish to these designs. They weren't just drawn, they were crafted to communicate emotion, narrative, and atmosphere in a way that few modern productions can even attempt. Okay, so we've established that vintage anime looks fantastic. But what about the stories? This is where things get really interesting. Anime wasn't just for kids. It could be deep, complex, and often philosophical. When we look at Neon Genesis Evangelion, this is one of the most influential anime series of the 90s. It's clear that anime was capable of tackling extreme, deep, heavy themes like depression, identity, and human psyche. The story of Shinji Ikari and his battles against mysterious angels wasn't just about cool robots fighting monsters. It was a meditation on personal pain, trauma, and a search for meaning in a world that has just experienced an apocalypse. And this kind of storytelling wasn't just reserved for the 90s. Anime from the 70s and 80s was filled with political and social commentary. Take Akira for example, a movie that at its core is about government corruption, the political dangers of unchecked technological power, and what happens when a society's problems grow too big to control. It's pretty wild to me that a movie made in 1988 could still feel so relevant today. Don't you guys think so too? That's one of the most fascinating things about vintage anime. It has this incredible longevity. It's not just tied to the era that it was made in. It feels timeless because it touches on universal themes that never get old. But it's not all dark themes. Shows like Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z brought about a different kind of energy. One of optimism, friendship, and adventure. Even though these shows were more lighthearted, they still carried meaning. Friendship and love were often the strongest weapons in the battle against evil. How great is that? Now let's talk about nostalgia. For a lot of us, vintage anime is about those childhood memories. Saturday mornings, racing home from school, grabbing your snack, whatever it was, just to watch your favorite show. It's something that many of us grew up with. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, chances are you remember when anime first became a mainstream thing in the West. For me, it was watching Dragon Ball Z on Toonami. And if you were a 90s kid, you probably remember those days too. The thrill of watching those epic battles between Goku and Frieza, all those emotional moments between the Sailor Scouts, it was also fresh and exciting. Even if you weren't around when these shows first aired, the sense of nostalgia still comes through when you watch them. There's just something about the vibe of old anime. The music, the voice acting, the animation styles, all of it just reminds me of those earlier days of discovering anime. It's almost like stepping back in time for me. Now let's zoom out a bit and look at anime's impact on global pop culture. Vintage anime didn't just influence Japan, it changed the entire animation landscape worldwide. Many of today's popular anime creators often cite vintage classics as their main influences. Look at Cowboy Bebop, an anime that blends jazz music, westerns, and film noir. It's an anime that would not exist without the legacy of Lupin III or other 70s shows. Even modern hits like Attack on Titan and One Punch Man owe a debt to these older series. The way they blend these high-stake action with deep character development and social commentary, that's all thanks to the groundwork laid by vintage anime. So when you watch a show today, you're not just watching something new, you're witnessing the evolution of the medium. So what makes vintage anime so timeless? Well, the truth is, it's a combination of things. It's the art style, it's the storytelling, it's the themes, and of course, the emotional connection we all have to these shows. They transcend time, space, and culture. So whether you're watching Astro Boy for the first time, or rewatching Akira for the 100th time, these works resonate on a universal basis. It's not just about the nostalgia, it's about the feeling of something that connects us all. Vintage anime continues to capture the hearts of new generations because its core messages about humanity, friendship, and the world never age. So after all of that, I think it's safe to say that vintage anime is here to stay. It's not just a relic of the past, it's a cornerstone of the anime world that continues to influence and inspire us today. But now I want to hear from you. What's your favorite vintage anime? Do you have a show that's near and dear to your heart? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the timeless world of vintage anime, make sure you hit that like button, you subscribe, and you ring that bell notification so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for watching, and remember, always keep the classics alive. Thanks for watching. Peace. Peace.